Hello and welcome to the pilot episode of the Real Estate or Death podcast. This is about reaching financial freedom through real estate, and I'm going to have a series of guests on to help you achieve that goal. My name is Max Willett. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams in Rhode Island. Wasn't a realtor first, but I like to consider myself an entrepreneur. May not be insanely successful yet, but I'm getting there. And I could not be more happy to have on this amazing mortgage professional as my first guest in this pilot episode of this inspiring podcast. So if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. My name is Jeremy Von Fleetern. I work for Semper Home Loans. I am a loan originator. I have been in the mortgage business for almost 20 years. I enjoy what I do. I think it's a fun and rewarding most of the time position, and I love helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. And this podcast is going to be a little bit on the shorter side. Listen to it on your way into work, get inspired on your way, and inspire yourself to work hard during the day to get to that financial freedom. And I think something that's really important is that we discuss first what financial freedom is.
Sure.
A lot of people make money. A lot of people make a lot of money, but they work and they work and they work and they work and they work, so on and so on and so on. There's no freedom.
Well,
It's just financial.
yeah.
So differentiating financial freedom from being wealthy are two totally different things.
Sure.
And real estate, I think, is the most accessible way to get to that financial freedom. Obviously, if you come out with some big product like the Shake Weight, which is always a great example,
Right.
and you become a millionaire, that's obviously a way to financial freedom because they're manufacturing
Sure.
it. You're sitting back in your
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar mansion, while these things sell. But for people that don't,
Shake weight.
yeah, I always say if you ever think a product's going to fail, just remember somebody sold that. It's all about
Yes,
the
that's
marketing.
right. That's
It's
right.
all about the marketing.
Always.
So, and just reaching that, you don't have to come up with some product idea. It's available. It's there. The biggest thing is educating yourself. And in my opinion, reaching financial freedom is maybe buying rental properties, right?
Sure.
I think
I mean,
that's a great start.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of residual income, right? I mean, if you're basically creating passive income for yourself on a regular
Exactly.
basis. So, yeah, I mean, I talk to people when they're first time home buyers. I always ask them if they're interested in owning property. I think financial freedom defines itself, or you define it really. I mean, it's because it's different for everybody. I mean, like you said, some people work and work and work, but some people want to work and work and work.
Right.
You
yeah.
know, so and the reality is, again, it's whatever it means to you. A lot of times when I'm talking to people initially, I ask them that question, especially if they're first-time home buyers. I say, "You have any interest in owning multiple properties and trying to create some financial, freedom for yourself?" And most are interested. Some are just like, "No, I don't want to be a landlord." So,
Right.
that's fine. But it's a great investment.
Right. And I think that it's a great way to tackle high interest rates, even though, let's really think about historically, interest rates are pretty, I guess, average right now.
Yeah.
If you were to do like a total graph of interest rates
Over time, yeah.
that's the thing is people don't realize we were at historic lows a couple of years ago. 2.5% for mortgages is insane.
I mean, if you haven't been out in the financial world, or even needed to, be a part of that, if you're like yourself, you're in high school, college, whatever, you're not looking at interest rates as much as, the average person on a day-to-day basis who,
Right.
lives off of, borrowing money and to acquire assets. So, I think, if you haven't been in the out in the buying world for since 2012, we'll say. I mean, even before that, really. But you haven't known what a real market is. What real interest rates are. I mean, 6% used to be a normal market. I think now it's going to be closer to 5%, because obviously the income curve is not following the inflation. But so I think that's really a normal market. So we're just over that. I mean, it's average because we have to be over it at some point, right, to make it an average.
Right. And I think, and you go back to what you said, people don't want to be a landlord. And when you're young, you got to make sacrifices.
Sure.
I think that's really important. And I might be a hypocrite when I say this because I don't think I've made that sacrifice yet. And I'm just going to say that bluntly. Like,
Yeah.
I don't own a home right now. And it's something that I hope to achieve within the next couple of years. And I'm going to swallow that pill. I'm going to get a multifamily. And it might suck dealing with a renter, but that's a great thing is you get to control who that renter is to a certain extent.
No income or no anything worth doing is going to be difficult, you know. I mean, anything, you know, it's not. I mean, I like, you know, you hear a lot of the same stuff, right? In the real estate world, we hear a lot of people are like, oh, I could be a realtor. No, it's so easy. You guys just write contracts and collect a check. That's not what it is.
No,
but
no.
and you know, and it's a lot harder than and people think. And to be really successful at it, it's really difficult.
Oh yeah, and you have to make uncomfortable phone calls. Cold calling sucks. It is the worst. Like people think, oh, you just pick up the phone and you call people. Well, it's not like that. Especially when you come from a different background. You know, I'm coming from. I mean, I'm 22. I had for those of you that don't know me personally, I have another business. It's a 3D printing company called Custom 3D, and sure, I'm running the business. I'm talking to people, but most of the time, people come to me.
Right.
They already need the service.
And eventually, over time, you know, after doing this for a while, that'll probably be more of what happens to you going forward.
I mean, you and I both know realtors who literally their whole business is off of referrals, and they're successful from it.
Yeah.
You know, and once you've been around for 20, 30 years, that'll be your business, especially if you're a good realtor. If you're a bad realtor, you won't be in real estate for 20 years, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's funny. I think, you know, and you know, the definition of a good or bad realtor is really the perception of you know, the people,
situation
the
and
Well, I mean, really. So, you know, I mean, it's hard, but you know, I think if you're always working to do the best for the client, you'll be fine, you know, and that's really, that's what you got to focus on. It's hard to make the decision not based on what you need or you want. It's just what they need and they want. So that's what makes you a good realtor.
So yeah, and I think going back to defining financial freedom, we went a little off track there, but I think a great definition for financial freedom is having passive income.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, you know, real estate is probably it is one of your guaranteed investments going forward, and I think people look at it too short term. You know what I mean? I think too many people think in a 2 to 5 year term versus 10 to 15. You're signing a 30-year mortgage,
right?
So you know, it's 30 years, and obviously you can sell it and all those other things, but you know, you've got to view it as that first, and I think that's what helps. I mean, my first house I bought was a 2-family. It was in Cranston, and it was 2005. So you know, in 2008, it was worth half of what I paid for it.
Right.
You know, and that's a real thing, and that happens. But I sold it a couple years ago, 2 years ago, for $100,000 more than I paid for it. So I mean, in 15 years, it was worth it.
Yeah.
You know, and I was forced to be a landlord because my family was growing. I had to buy another house. So, you know, and you know, it was great. I mean, and it was somebody else paid for it for the most part, and you know,
right. Especially with rentals right now, people say, oh well, home prices are so expensive. Well, rentals caught up to that. So if you're looking, even if you need to spend $350,000-$400,000 on a multifamily, you can get $2,000 a month, and that'll subsidize more than half of your mortgage.
I mean, yeah, my friend's renting a 2-family right now, 2 beds, 1 bath in one of them, and the 3 beds, 1 bath in the other. The 3 beds getting $2,200 a month.
Insane.
I mean, it's a nice apartment, but I mean, you can rent a house now for over $3,000.
Right, and the thing is even if you're losing money, let's say you're living on the other side and you're losing money on the house, quote unquote, you're still gaining equity.
Yeah.
You know, because you have to think long term, like you said. Don't think short term, think long term. Think at least 10 to 15 years.
And these are conversations I have with all first time home buyers.
Right.
I'm telling you, I think one of the things that we talk about, one of the terms that's used quite a bit in our business is house hacking. And what that is basically is, you know, you buy, you know, a multifamily, say you buy a 4-family, right? And you live in it for a year, you fix it up, do whatever you got to do. And then you want to buy another one. Now you move into a 3-family, and you can actually continuously put a minimal amount of money down every time, depending on what types of loans you do, if you structure it correctly, and you know, and you're progressing, getting into a nicer neighborhood, you know, but you can end up owning 3 or 4 houses, putting 3 to 5% down every time. So, and because you're going to live in it for a year, so and that is the way to do it by far. You know, now you have these 3-family, the 4-family or 3-family. You can't really find 4 families in Rhode Island. But, let's say the 3-family.
And if you do, they're $750,000.
Right. I mean, but the rent is covering it. I
right.
mean, it's really crazy. And sometimes I look at it, I just can't believe it. But,
Right.
but
Yeah.
you buy something on the east side of Providence, I mean, that'll rent itself forever. And you typically pay the whole year in rent up front
Right.
to the Brown students and stuff. So,
Right.
so it's always there. And I talk to people about it every time, but you have to look at it that way as a 30-year investment.
Yeah. So, so we've defined what financial freedom is, and that's a huge part of this podcast. And why did I name it "Give Me Real Estate" or "Give Me Death"? That I always get whenever I tell people that, that exactly happens.
Yeah.
They laugh. Well, I mean, for me, I think we live in a great country, and I'm not gonna get political opinions here, but I think that's political, saying that we live in a great country. Just because it has issues doesn't mean it's not great. And we live in a country where financial freedom is achievable and it's accessible, whether or not you think that. It's all about up here. I'm reading a great book right now called Positive Mental Attitude, and it's starting to reshape the way I think. I'm really not that far through it, but I'm gonna keep reading it, and it's a goal of mine to finish that within the next week.
That's what I preach to my kids. But I mean, it's literally
Right.
you're positive. If you have a positive attitude, everything is easier.
Right, and it's easy to say. It's easy to say that, but
Yeah.
practicing it is very difficult.
Yeah.
So let's get onto what this podcast is going to be really discussing. This is a great introductory about the reasoning behind the podcast, and the 3 questions I'm going to start to ask every guest is: why are you successful? Why you? And do you think you've achieved the American dream? Tying back into the patriotic aspect of this whole podcast.
Yeah.
And, obviously there's a lot of different people in this real estate industry when it comes to mortgages, when it comes to being a real estate agent, being an attorney, being a home inspector, being anything that has to do with real estate. There's more than one person in it. If there was only one person, then we would be screwed. So let's start off with, why are you successful in the mortgage business?
I mean, I think probably because I don't think I am.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I think if any type A person that's in this industry that's always trying to do more and always trying to, it's mostly driven by the fact that you don't feel like you've done enough, and
Right.
so, and I think that I think I'm successful not just for that reason. I think I'm successful in the business because of my mental attitude. I think I am not somebody who is going to write a loan for somebody just because I want a commission check, or something like that. I literally try to help everybody.
Right.
And I know I've passed, I do it all the time. Anybody in this business that sees this or, will absolutely tell you that I hand business off to other mortgage lenders. That's why I'm friendly with most of them in the state or throughout the country, really. I refer people all the time because, it's about the client. It's not about me. And I think I think if you go at it from that perspective all the time, you'll always be successful.
Right.
It's not hard because people can see right through it if you don't really believe it or, what you're saying. So, and so every time I talk to somebody, I start off, my favorite question to start with people is, all right, well, tell me about yourself. What do you want to do? And obviously, I know they want to buy a house, right? They want me to help them with the financing piece of it. But they're so taken aback by that question because nobody asks, I'm like, tell me about yourself, tell me about your budget. Tell me what you do. How much do you want to spend on a mortgage, on a monthly basis? And they're like, they haven't even thought about it. Most of them don't know.
Right.
And, and I think by going at it from that perspective, trying to figure out what they want, what they need, right? And then saying, all right, well, that translates into this type of property. Is that what you want to buy? Or do you want to buy something more? Well, that looks like this, rather than me just telling you what you can buy, I don't have to make your payment. You do, right? So that's what I tell people all the time. So I can tell you what you qualify for on paper, but you probably don't want a $4,000 mortgage payment. So, and I think that's what makes me the most successful in this business.
Right. And that will sort of tie us into my next question is, why you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why do people choose you over other loan officers?
Yeah. And I think, well, obviously what we just talked about is a piece of it, but the other part is that I went to school to be a teacher, right? So I now, people are like, well, mortgages are definitely not, that's not high school. I wanted to be a secondary education math teacher, but I teach people how to buy houses, and I teach people how to move through this insane process. Obviously when rates get higher and liquidity gets a little tougher in the banking world, underwriting gets much harder. And so having somebody be able to guide you through that, and be able to explain to you why I need to know why you bought that pack of gum last week, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's helpful, and I think that makes a big difference for most people.
Right. Yeah, and I want to talk about a particular situation. We're not going to name any names or anything like that because of client confidentiality. But I did a deal with Jeremy as a real estate agent, referring business to him for the mortgage. And this story will perfectly sum up, I think, the type of loan officer you are. We had a client who was looking, obviously, to buy a house, and this person was leaving a marriage, unfortunately, and basically, in order for this person to get that money, they needed to get the money from their ex-spouse, trying to be as vague as possible here, and that ex-spouse needed to refinance their home to get that money to give to this person. And you were talking or trying to talk to this person, help them guide through this whole process so that that person could get the money to our buyer. And that's not something, people don't realize this, that's not something that a normal loan officer does. They're just like, oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah, I know.
They're not like, oh, well, let me talk to this person. Let me see what I can do to help. I want to help you with this. You need a home. What do I need to do to help you with that?
Yeah.
And people don't do that. And I want to thank you because that helped me jumpstart my real estate career. Yeah. And I know that person who I'm talking about is extremely thankful that you helped them with that situation.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I think divorce situations are tough. I mean, it's never pretty, no matter what, no matter how amicable it is. It's my favorite line, and you've heard this before, is money makes people stupid. So I've seen so many situations that nobody thought it would go that way, but it did, right? And so anytime there's a divorce situation, most of the time there's one person that handles the money and the finances in the house, and the other person, has no idea how that works, and not by ignorance, just like, well, I guess it is ignorance. It's just like, well, that's being taken care of. So in this particular situation, I mean, very smart woman, and she knew what she was talking about, but didn't have any idea how this process works, and
like a lot of people.
Yeah,
like
which
a lot
most
of people.
Most exactly. And then so I enjoy educating those people and helping them figure it out. And I was talking to her about retirement and things like that, and like, hey, if you're gonna do this, you should put some of it down, maybe not all of it, so you can move some money into this retirement, things like that. Talk to a financial advisor about it. And I think that matters to people more than anything else. Is that I'm really just trying to help. It's not just trying to get
the loan is just a byproduct of me helping you.
Right. Yeah, and I want to make sure you're successful and set up. So it's the same reason why I ask people what they want to spend on a house. I don't again. I want you to be successful. I want this to work for you.
What the bank tells you can afford and what you can actually afford are two different things.
Right. I mean, I don't see everything. I don't see. I mean, people get.
People might have a $1,500 car payment, which isn't that unpopular.
Right. Well, I can see.
Insane.
That I can see on paper, but I don't see daycare. I don't see. Certain things, like car insurance. I mean, you might have really high car insurance.
Right.
There's things I don't know that I can't see on all your bank statement, your credit. Some things just don't show up. So that's why it's best for you to figure out what you can afford.
Right.
And then, again, I'll give you whatever. Most people say, well, you tell me. I'm like, no, that's not how this works.
No.
And I will. I mean, listen, I will give people whatever they want. It's their mortgage.
Right.
I'm not going to deny them the ability to apply for a mortgage. They can do whatever they want, but the idea is to try and make sure, again, that they're set up to be successful. I don't want to find out, the house got foreclosed on because, there's no way you can make that payment without eating ramen noodles and not having to eat in the house.
Right.
So,
right.
So there's a lot of things to consider. So,
absolutely. So yeah, I mean, that's all great information. And I think this is going to perfectly flow into the final question. And I think the question that we could really get the deepest into here. Do you think you've achieved the American dream?
Yeah, I kind of joked with you a little bit about this yesterday, but I said, well, what's the American dream these days?
Yeah.
I think the reality is, I think that what's great about this country is you can have an opinion you know, that's completely different than somebody else's or everybody else's. Doesn't matter. And, you know, and that you're afforded that right, you know, and so, you know, the American dream for one is not the same for the other. But I do think in general, I have a beautiful family. I have, you know, we've been through some stuff, you know, the last couple of years with my son and my mother-in-law now, you know, so there's lots of stuff going on, but, you know, when I go home, I'm happy, you know, and I think that's good enough for me. You know, I own my own house and I have a good business and I have a wife I've been with for 23 years. You know? So we were very lucky, found each other young, because obviously I'm not that old. But you know, it's great. So I would say I'm very happy, and I think that's really the dream.
How do you think that your opinion on that has progressed over the years?
Well, I mean, it changes. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's obviously anybody will tell you they have their first kid, it'll change your whole world. You know, for better and worse, both. There's all, you know, there's give and take and everything. You know, I think the reason why my marriage works is because my wife puts up with me, but you know, but B, I think there's just where we compromise. It's not you know, and so you know, I think that. Over the years, obviously, like, you know, going through what we went through with Sawyer, you know, that completely altered things, you know, from my vision of what's good, you know, what's happiness, you know what I mean? So, you know, and I've been through a lot of things in my life. I've had two of my close friends pass away when I was with them, both of them. So, you know, and when it happened, and so all those things just alter your perception of like what happiness is. But I think that's what the dream is to be happy,
right?
Like honestly happy, you know. I mean, not Facebook happy, you know, you know, and you know, and really just be comfortable in your own skin. So
right, and I think this again ties back to financial freedom, and that gives you the opportunity to be happy.
Sure, you know, you know, in this market, you know, it's not as free as we'd like it to be, but the passive income, like you were talking about before, you know, makes it a little easier. You know,
it is. I think, you know, anything can be achieved with hard work, but it is the most accessible way to reach financial freedom is through passive income and rental properties.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't need
equity.
to strike lightning in a
right.
Exactly. You don't need to strike lightning in a bottle, creating the next great chess set. You know what I mean? Like it's there. It's accessible, and it can be achieved with hard work.
Yeah, and I think it feels like it's so far out of reach for some, you know, for most.
But it's not.
It's not. You're right. But I think that's the perception again for most people is they're like, how could I own multiple properties and all this? Like, I mean, well, you got to get started. So I mean, you know, it's when you give Max a call.
Stay out of debt. Stay out of debt. Useless debt. Useless debt. Don't buy expensive cars when you're young. I have a car that is 10 years old that has 181,000 miles on it, and I'm struggling to justify spending $25,000 on a car because it has issues, but I'm going to get it fixed and it's going to keep on running, and I don't need to go and have a status symbol and go buy a brand new BMW and make people look at me and say, look at him, you know, like I don't care about that.
I think I agree. I live in my truck. So,
but you're further along this journey. You can get that sort of things. When you're starting out like me, I'm talking to people that are young, that are 22 years old. You don't need to do that.
Don't value that.
Don't do that. Materials will drag you into an early financial grave, buying and getting in debt for materialistic reasons. And getting in good debt, buying properties that have appreciation and equity. You know, a car is a depreciating asset unless you buy something that there's such thing as cars that can appreciate in value, but not something you can daily drive.
Yeah, that's a real expensive car.
Exactly. So, you know, like that's.
If Bentley's your first car, we got a problem. But I agree, man. I agree, and I think, you know, one of the other things I kind of wanted to point out before, and you know, we kind of got off track a little bit, but one of the things I wanted to talk about is, you know, is people talk about student loans and how that it is kind of, you are set up to be in a tough situation by the way the way that they're structured, deferring interest. You know, people like, well, payments are deferred. Well, so is the interest. So that's why the values go up. But I talk to kids, students, college students all the time. I said, listen, why not buy a house that pays for itself? You can live in a unit and pay off your student loans. Like, instead of paying rent of $1,500, $2,000, whatever it is you're going to pay to live in an apartment, own a house, have somebody else pay for it.
Are you talking about after you graduate?
Yeah, or even while you're in school. I mean, it's
Okay.
fine. It doesn't matter. I might as well. You got to live somewhere.
Yeah.
So but yeah, after you graduate, for sure. I mean, you're going to go get a starting position in whatever you're doing, unless you're a doctor. Well, even then, you're still not going to be making all the money, right? And those student loans are huge. So
Yes.
hundreds of thousands. So
I have a family member who's over $200,000 in debt for
if you
physician's
if you own a
assistant.
3-family and the other 2 units are basically paying the mortgage and the maintenance of the property, you're not paying rent. And now you're taking that money and putting it onto your student loans and paying them off.
Right.
I mean, that creates your financial freedom right there, rather than pay rent and the student loans.
Rent is 100% interest.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, it's gone. So,
Money out of your pocket.
Yeah,
It's
and
just like buying a car. It's
if you
money out of-
consider, if you look at it on a bigger scale, like $2,000 a month is $24,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
And you know what's funny is actually buying a car, I think, is more it's better for your credit than renting. Because if you make the payments on time, it's going to increase your credit score.
Right. I know.
So buying a car is better than renting a place. It's
And I said, if you can live for free, why not? I mean,
Right.
and then it's not going to be free, but it's going to be close. I mean, it's going to be much less than you paying rent to somebody else.
not having rent or mortgage, I think, would be considered living for free.
Agreed.
Yes.
So I mean, I think that I preach that to students all the time. It's like, you think it's impossible, but it's probably not.
Yeah.
It's probably the best time to do it.
And what's crazy is that writing down your goals, I think, makes it easier to achieve. I am somebody who had a closed mind on just simply writing down your goals. I was like, what's the point? But not only writing down your goals and sitting down with somebody and talking about them, it changes your total perception of what those goals are and how easily they're achieved. If you don't write it down, it's just a thought in your head and you don't know. You just says, it'll happen someday.
It feels more real if you write it down.
It feels more attainable.
Right.
Right. Like a short-term goal for me right now is to get my real estate license in New Hampshire to start my transition to
You have people up there, yeah.
Right. Start my transition to moving up there.
Yep.
And I wrote it down. I kept saying to myself, well, what do I got to do? What do I got to do? In my head. I wrote it down. I'm going to get the course now, and I'm going to get my license by the end of the year.
Nice. Good for you.
For New Hampshire.
100%. I mean, it's super helpful. And I think when you sit down and actually write it out, I think that a lot of people, even from a budget perspective, I think most people don't do this. And if you just sat down and put it down on paper, you'll easily see why it makes more sense to do something like that, like to buy a multifamily and again, not that they're easy to find these days, but if you don't start now, it'll never happen.
Right.
So you got to at least see it. So when you see that you can if you could put $2,000 a month onto your student loans, they'll be paid off pretty quickly.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And if you don't have student loans and you're getting that rental income and you can afford the full mortgage,
Yeah.
and then you pay that extra $2,000 on top of the
I
mortgage.
wouldn't put it on the mortgage, but yeah, that's a financial advisor question. But I mean, you can make more. If you're a young person, you can make way more money all sorts of other places.
Right.
But yes, I mean, if that's your goal is to pay off the mortgage, then do that. I mean, whatever. So there's lots of
different situations for different people.
Yeah, it's all dependent on you. But if you don't put it into action, you don't ask somebody questions about, can I do this? You'll never know. So I try to tell students all the time, friends of mine that have kids in college, it's like, so when are we buying a house? And they just look at me like I have 3 heads. And then you talk to them about it and they're like, oh, wow, why not?
Right, especially if you're a parent with kids in college, like around University of Rhode Island and Narragansett, there's a lot of good opportunities because your kids have friends, hopefully, and and those friends can be renters.
Yeah, I mean they're going to rent a room somewhere anyway. I mean,
right.
They might as well, pay, rent a room that's paying your mortgage.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's definitely a missed opportunity if you don't own the property rather than paying housing to a college. And I know some colleges require you to, but as soon as you don't have to, like freshman year or whatever it is, then you should buy something.
You're talking $12,000 a year for a 12 by 12 room at the URI campus for a dorm room, shared showers. Yeah. There were exposed wires. The paint was peeling off the wall. $12,000, and that was 4 years ago.
Right.
Who knows what it is now?
Right.
Because college, I remember from when I was I must have been a sophomore in high school, and I was really interested in University of New Haven over in Connecticut.
Yeah.
I really liked the school. And from the time I was a sophomore in high school to when I was a senior, I think it went up $10,000.
It's crazy.
And you know, in that same time, so we're talking what could be almost $20,000 a year for room and board on a campus. Right. It's gonna go, and you're gonna get a stupid high interest rate too for student loans.
Right.
Like you're talking 10+% depending on your credit score for a student loan. So it's gonna go to debt anyways.
Yeah. So I mean, if you own the house for 3 years while they're in school, and you decide you don't want it anymore, probably the equity you'll gain, especially in this area, you know, the equity you'll gain will probably pay off whatever loans they did get.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you just got to see it that you got to, and I get it. It's not for everybody. It's, you know, it's going to take work, and, you know, you're going to have to manage the property, which there are people that'll do that for you too, you know? So, but you know, it'll easily, it's a way better financial decision to do it that way. You know, again, some people just don't want to do the work, but then you pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Yeah. This has been a great conversation. Great inaugural episode of Real Estate or Death.
I'm honored.
You should be. You should be. So, hopefully you guys listening to this got inspired and are starting out your journey to reach financial freedom through real estate. And we're going to have a lot of great guests on, so keep an eye out for that. Jeremy's on Facebook, right? So
yes,
follow Jeremy.
Place, yeah.
Jeremy Von Flatern, not Von Flattern, for those of you listening. He gets very angry. So,
So I gave up on that a long time ago. Sawyer gets angry. I don't know. He'll give up on it too eventually.
Yeah. So, really appreciate it, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
a lot of great knowledge. And thank you guys for listening. And we will catch you in the next one.